Hello, I am Megan O'Keefe from Developer Relations at Google Cloud, and I'm here today to give a quick 10-minute rundown of some of the new features in Istio 1.4. I have the changelog open for the new Istio 1.4 release, which was released last week. And as you can see here in this list, there is a whole lot that got released with 1.4. What I'm going to try to do is take one or two items from each of these categories, traffic management, telemetry features, and show you them in action on a running Kubernetes cluster. So let's dive right in. All I've done before this is I have set up a new GKE cluster, just a regular 4 nodes, Kubernetes GKE 1.13, and I have installed Istio 1.4 onto the cluster. This is just a standard Helm template install script. I've installed the CRDs. I have toggled a lot of options. The reason has to do with some of the demos I'm going to show in just a moment. The key thing to note here about this install is that I've actually completely turned off Mixer. So Mixer is Istio's original telemetry and policy engine. That it's part of the control plane, and a really exciting development in the community is actually working towards getting rid of this component, largely due to performance reasons. And the way, but obviously, you still want telemetry from all of your Envoy proxies. So the way to do that is actually to install these adapters. They're basically custom Envoy filters that are going to go down into the data plane. And what I'm also doing here, all these YAMLs I'm applying, is I am actually also enabling a filter that will send metrics directly from the Envoy proxies, my sidecar proxies, to Stackdriver, which is Google Cloud's metrics product. So, okay, so this is all I've done. We can see here that I have installed Istio, an hour ago or so. You'll notice there's no telemetry, there's no policy here. The other thing I have done is I've just installed like a really basic sample app with just, it's basically a retail app. If I open it using, and I've exposed it through the Ingress gateway as well. So yeah, it's just, it's a way to kind of see what's happening in the cluster, because it has a lot of services that talk. I have enabled Kiali, the service graph, and I can see here are all my services running. So this is what we're working with to start. These are all of my pods. Okay, injected with the Istio proxy. So going back to this Envoy native telemetry piece, this is the first thing that I'll show. So new in 1.4 is the ability to get these metrics into Stackdriver. What I have here is the Stackdriver Metrics Explorer for my project in Google Cloud that my cluster is part of. And what I am able to do here, and I can actually just walk through it piece by piece, is I'm able to directly get things like throughput from the Envoy proxies directly. These are, the names of my pods, cart service, 6B, whatever, and I'm able to see these directly in Stackdriver. So before, there was an extra hop, right? We had to go from Envoy to Mixer, Mixer to Stackdriver using the Stackdriver Mixer adapter. Now we're able to go directly from Envoy to Stackdriver. So for performance reasons, this is like really exciting, and it just adds simplicity, I think. And all the basic proxy metrics we are now able to see in Stackdriver. There is one thing, which is that TCP metrics I don't think are working. So I have some TCP traffic to a database that's not showing up in Kiali, but that's okay. That will most likely be fixed soon. Okay, so that's Envoy native telemetry, the first thing I'll show. Let's go back into the change notes here. So there are two security features in 1.4 that I am super excited about. One has to do with authentication, the other authorization. Let's start with MTLS. So before, this is kind of the old way, right? To get MTLS, or encryption, to work between two Istio injected workloads, you needed to have two resources. You needed a policy, or a mesh policy, and a destination rule. So this is to handle both the server side and client side of mutual TLS, both ends. New in 1.4 is the ability to not need this destination rule piece. So what I'm going to show here is actually we're able to only have a policy and no destination rule. And so the reason this is exciting for me is because this is often like a major debugging snafu with Istio, because before we had this istio-ctl authentication TLS check command, there was no real way to know if your destination rule was saying not MTLS and your policy was saying another thing. So what I'm going to show here is actually if I apply this YAML, I get MTLS fully functional for one of my services, email service, no destination rule needed. So let's see here. This is just applying that YAML. And if I rerun this check on MTLS, I scroll up here, I can actually see that traffic is encrypted for email service only. I can continue, to make checkouts in my app. All is well. There is one tricky thing, which is that once I do this, I don't know if Kiali knows that auto MTLS is a thing, because what we'll see in maybe a minute is this is going to actually get grayed out, and also if we enable like the security icon, it's not going to say it's MTLS. But again, another thing that can be ironed out. Okay, awesome. The next piece has to do with authorization. So new in 1.4 is this v1 beta 1 authorization policy, CRD. This resource replaces the RBAC policies that are currently part of Istio. So before, and so I'm going to show, I guess, this example because I think it speaks to the simplicity this new feature adds. Before, if you wanted to get to make RBAC work for one of your services, you needed 3 resources. You needed to turn on RBAC for that service. You needed a role, and you needed a role binding. So if you're familiar with Kubernetes RBAC, it's very similar. This was, I think, problematic for a couple of reasons. It kind of operated at the host level rather than the workload level. It's complex. So what we have here now is actually the ability to have one resource that enables authorization, defines this sort of abstract role, and then it sort of binds a policy to a specific workload. So the source principal, source destination. This is, I think, super exciting. The other really exciting thing is that now you can enforce these policies on the ingress and egress gateways. So if you have multiple services that are backing one of your gateways, the ingress gateway, for example, you can create a resource for that. And that's actually the example I'm going to show, because my app here is exposed, the front end is exposed with the gateway. I can actually just show you that. So yeah, I'm sort of routing all requests through the ingress gateway to this front end service running on port 80. So what I'm actually going to do here, so this authorization policy says any traffic that is going through the ingress gateway and any GET request I want to make to my front end, completely lock it down. So I'm not actually opening any traffic. I'm just showing like a very basic example of locking down all access. So if I apply this resource and I wait, 5 or 10 seconds, I should be seeing a 403 pretty soon. Yeah, so I get this RBAC access denied. There's a whole lot of rules that you can apply to one of these authorization policy objects. You can do enable disable based on the source properties of the source workload making the request. You can there are all sorts of conditions, like the header has to contain a certain thing to be allowed. So I'm really excited to dig into this more and maybe make some examples for it. Cool. Authorization policy. Super exciting stuff. Okay, let's talk about traffic now. There's one item that I'm really excited about for traffic management, new in 1.4, which is being able to mirror a percentage of traffic. Why is this useful? I think it's useful because often we hear users talking about traffic mirroring in the context of A/B testing. In production, though, if you want to do an A/B test, chances are, unless you're doing some kind of load test situation, you don't actually want to mirror all of the traffic going from service A to the mirrored version. Especially also if you're doing testing, that can be, I think, counterproductive in some cases. So being able to choose an exact percentage of what traffic you want to mirror or shadow over to another, I think, has a lot of applicability. So let's actually see how this works. So I'm going to reenact or perform the process of doing a sort of an A/B testing situation with one of my services, the product catalog service. What I'm going to do is deploy a new version, v2, create a destination rule, which slices up my service into two subsets, v1 and v2, based on the deployment labels. And then I'm going to mirror. So I'm going to send all production traffic, 100% of it, to v1, because v1 is still the sort of source of truth. It's still prod. v2 is the new version, or maybe the test version. And I'm going to mirror 40% of my production v1 traffic to v2. And the way I'm going to show this is working is I'll open Kiali once I apply this rule, and I will also show you the access logs for v2. The key thing to know about mirroring, if I click on this, is that all access logs show up as host authority blank service -shadow. So what I should hope to see on the v2 side is that inbound requests are, say, like product catalog shadow. Cool. Let's apply this. So let's go in here. The first thing that we're going to do is deploy the new version. I'm going to make sure it's running. Here it is over here. Cool. We've got our destination rule for product catalog just deployed. And we are going to now mirror 40% of that v1 traffic over to v2. So what we should see pretty quickly, here we are in our versioned app graph. If I zoom in here, we now have a virtual service applied to product catalog. Oops. Refresh that page. And we have v1 and v2. To actually see what's happening here, if I go in here and let's see, and I get the Istio proxy logs or the Envoy logs for v2, I start to see these requests come in, and you'll notice that they are labeled product catalog service -shadow. So we can see that this is actually sort of this fire and forget mirrored traffic. What I want to hopefully see in the future, which would be super exciting, not traffic animation, is that this request percentage, it's I think possibly a little bit deceiving in that, yeah, sometimes it doesn't actually say 100% of traffic is in fact going to v1. Right now it is, which is good. But yeah, sometimes it says that a percentage is going to v2 when actually that's technically true, but all of the production traffic is still going to v1 is the thing to know. Okay, moving right along here. The last couple of new features I would love to show have to do with config management and troubleshooting. So I think that one of the most major things to be released in 1.4 is extensions and improvements to Istio-ctl analyze. So Istio-ctl analyze is a command that is packaged up with the Istio-ctl tool, which you get when you install a new release or when you download the release of Istio. So if I just clear this out here, Istio-ctl. So there's a whole lot of commands that come with Istio-ctl, like verify your installation or do pre-install checks or apply a new settings configuration or look at the status of a specific service. There's also all of these experimental commands. I'm using the dashboard one to open the Kiali dashboard in the background. Yeah, there's even like experimental support for multi-cluster installation. But the one I'm going to look at here is analyze. So Istio CTL analyze. Let's see here, help. Oops, sorry, it's an experimental command. There we go. So what this lets you do is not only analyze your live cluster, but it also lets you check YAML files before you apply them to see if there are any issues, which I think is huge, right? It's almost like a dry run of applying new configuration. So picture, you could add this command easily to a like a CD system or even CI, where if you're pushing new Istio configuration, you can actually do a check against what you have in your cluster to see if something could potentially go wrong. So for example, if I run this, istio-ctl analyze-k, this is what will inspect the live version of my cluster. So we can see, right now everything is fine and clear, no validation issues found. What I can also do is run this command. Oops, let's actually go into the directory here. So if I run istio-ctl analyze on a YAML file that I have here, I've made several things wrong with this file. One is that we don't have a Hello World service. The other is that we don't have destination rules that do anything with the Hello World service. And lastly, my traffic weights do not add up to 100. So imagine, imagine you're doing a canary deployment and you're doing a progressive canary, and yeah, you've messed up the config. This can actually detect that. So let's see how. So istio analyze. Oops, keep forgetting that X for experimental. Oops. Look at the docs here. I think I have to do something to say it's a YAML file. Oh, I just misspelled the word analyze. Okay, let's see what the analyzer had to say here about our bad virtual service. It didn't recognize Hello World. That's good. Didn't recognize that we had the subsets, because we didn't. And then we also have a schema validation error that knows that all of these destination weights have to add up to 100. And it did that check for us. And we get these errors. You can use this, this tool also for things like gateways and policies. And yeah, really most of the Istio config can be checked with this tool. So yeah, I think it's really awesome and an exciting addition to Istio. Okay, one last thing I want to show is the new Golang client library for Istio. So up until 1.4, there was no official client library for Istio. There were others out there. What we now have in 1.4 is a new official client Go repo that's directly tapped into the CRDs in the Istio API itself. And I think this is super exciting, I think, because, well, for a lot of reasons. There are tools that already need to use a client library for Istio that can now re-platform on this. But also, just in terms of the future, I think where Istio excels is providing a ton of functionality and features, but in reality, when I talk to users, I find they're only actually looking to expose developers to a subset of what the APIs provide. And there are platform engineers that actually want to build on top of Istio to build UIs and all kinds of things. So this is super exciting, and I think the first step towards building out that sort of ecosystem of layers on top of Istio. Anyway, if I go into the client Go repo, so I've just sort of forked it. This is running on the master branch. I can run this sample, which is just doing a bunch of gets on various resources. It's pointing to my kube config, so it's going to talk to my cluster. And we can see it's getting all the virtual services and saying, oh, you have one, for your wildcard all hosts. You actually have one for product catalog too. This is the mirroring stuff we did before. Here's the auto MTLS stuff we just did. And here's the gateway exposing the front end. And this will also let you do any sort of CRUD operation on the Istio APIs. So imagine you want to build a tool that generates virtual services. You can now do that pretty easily using probably like less than 100 lines of Go code. So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to show. Super exciting. So with that, I will pause here. There's a lot more features I didn't cover, so definitely check out the 1.4 release notes. I also have this repo here, Istio 1.4 feature tour, where I will push all these manifests, and I have that link down in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and happy service meshing.